I think we can. Rastio, prosím, môžeme nahrávať.
Okay, we can go.
Great.
It's recording.
Perfect. Well, hello. I would love to welcome all of you from 5 countries, actually more countries right now, with Mr. Mandl being from Austria and you all being in Brussels. Here in this our meeting of policy recommendations within the project of university debates organized by MESA 10 from Slovakia and CEAS from Serbia. Normally, we would be in Brussels together as we were last years. Unfortunately, the whole COVID situation prevented us from doing so. My name is Lucia Klapáčová. I'm from Slovakia, from a MESA 10 organization, and I will be moderating today's debate. Well, once again, I would love to welcome everybody, welcome all teams from our participating universities, which is from Moldova, Academy of Economic Studies from Chisinau, then Faculty of Political Science and International Relations from Banská Bystrica, Slovakia. Then from Serbia, we have a Belgrade University, Faculty of Political Sciences from Belgrade, and also University of Novi Sad from Novi Sad. From Slovakia, we also welcome Comenius University, Faculty of Philosophy from Bratislava, and also Matej Bel University from Banská Bystrica. And then Montenegro, University of Montenegro, Faculty of Political Science, and Bosnia and Herzegovina, International University of Sarajevo from Sarajevo. And our aim today is to present not only some work that the students did throughout the whole year, because the project ran throughout the whole year. The aim actually is also to give the recommendations to members of European Parliament from their point of view, from their own countries, on the important issues of international relations, European affairs, and the NATO transatlantic relations as well. And I think we really have what to talk about today. So I hope the teams are ready. And how we will run the teams in the order which I will call you, will have 5 minutes to present your recommendations to our MEPs. And then MEPs, both of us, Mr. Mandl and Mr. Bilcik, will have time to react. And before we go, the most important thing is to welcome our amazing, I don't know now, guests or hosts, actually. If we were in Brussels, you would be our hosts. This way, you are as well, anyway. It is really my very big pleasure to introduce Vladimir Bilcik from Slovakia, a member of European Parliament, who I have the honor to know him for many, many years. Since the time when he was a really distinguished person in our foreign affairs and international relations of my country. And currently he is a member of European Parliament for Slovakia, member of EPP, European People's Party, and the chair of a delegation to the EU Montenegro Stabilization and Association Parliamentary Committee. And I also would love to welcome Mr. Lukas Mandl from Austria, also from EPP, who is a shadow rapporteur of EPP on Kosovo. Vladimir, could you just tell us a few words as well, please?
Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you very much, Lucia, and it's a real pleasure to be with you, and I'm also very happy to be joined by my dear colleague Lukas Mandl from Austria. We actually regularly commute together, take the same airplane usually from Vienna, Schwechat to Brussels, and often on the way back home. So this is just another example of a very good collaboration we have within the EPP, but also between Slovakia and Austria on a very important activity, which is really how we can engage directly with students, but also students from inside the European Union and from countries which are in the neighborhood extremely important to us. And I hope countries which at some point and not too distant future may also have a real chance of being part of the European Union. This is a project which I followed for a number of years in my previous capacity before I joined politics as an academic, as a think tanker. I also had the pleasure of taking part in these inter-university debates covering a number of issues, and it's always been a real pleasure and a lot of fun. I am very happy to continue from this position as a member of the European Parliament. Now, for us, this is mostly a listening exercise. Of course, if you're in Brussels, and originally I plan to actually host a number of you in Brussels, and I hope we can still do it at some point in the future, whenever we are able to open up the Parliament again safely to all of you. But I'm afraid that, quite frankly, it'll be a while before that actually does happen. You know, but all the same, we are here connected via Zoom. I'm keen to listen, I'm keen to learn, both Lukas and I are ready to not only listen to your suggestions, but also respond to recommendations. And this is to be a debate. And I know we have a number of people from the Eastern neighborhood here, from the Western Balkans. Please ask questions. In addition to my activities in Montenegro, I'm also the standing rapporteur for Serbia. And this is another big connection I have with my dear colleague Lukas Mandl, because he's the shadow rapporteur covering Kosovo. So we also discuss a lot of the situation in the Balkans. And of course, at the moment, especially in the context of the restart of the dialogue between Pristina and Belgrade. This is really from my side a brief introduction. Pleasure to be here, and let's get started. I think we have divided among us who is going to respond to whom and react. I think we start with Chisinau from Moldova, and I think Lukas will be the first one to respond. And then we go on to Slovakia and on to Belgrade, so etc. I just look forward to having this exchange. And again, if you have any questions related to also our work, any political issues you want to raise, feel free. We are always happy to discuss, engage. This is also your opportunity. Let's make this as informal as we can. While we learn something, we should also have fun. Discussing politics should be fun. It shouldn't be boring. So let's make it such. Thanks.
Amazing. Thank you very much, Vladimir. You see, ladies and gentlemen, this is how MEP who is prepared looks like. Perfect, beautiful, thank you. And I also would love to welcome Anja Petkovic from CEAS, from Belgrade, our co-organizer as well. Hi. All right. Still, Mr. Mandl, is there something you would like to say at the beginning?
Thanks for the invite. Thank you for having me. I agree in everything with what Vladimir Bilcik has said, especially with the fact that it's a time of listening for us now. And this is always important for elected officials, not only to listen to respond, but also to listen to understand. And that's what I want to do today. And I want to underline what Vlado has said, especially on the cooperation between Slovakia and Austria within the European Union. We are all Central Europe. And that means something. We especially take care, let's put it this way, for the Balkans, especially for the Western Balkans today. And I would say for the future of Europe, the role of Vladimir Bilcik cannot be underestimated, because he is a rapporteur for the largest country in the Western Balkans with the strongest economy, that's Serbia. And that the Western Balkans are not yet part of the European Union is one of the large weaknesses on a global scale of Europe. We have lost Great Britain, and we should do everything we can not to lose the Western Balkans as well on their path of EU integration, which are even not yet EU members today. I'm happy to have the opportunity to contribute to this whole endeavor as a Kosovo shadow rapporteur in European Parliament and the responsible person for the Kosovo integration process in the European People's Party. And these are only a few examples of fields where we work together, but important examples which mean a lot to the future of Europe. Other working fields on my side are, besides foreign policy, security and defense. I'm serving as a vice chair in the Security Defense Committee. I'm a member of the Employment Committee, as well as of the Committee for Liberties and Justice. So Home Affairs, if you want to put it this way. And beside the Western Balkans, my focused areas on deployment are the Middle East and the Korean Peninsula. That's it, to put it in a nutshell. Now it's really the time of listening, and I'm curious on what we will hear, and look forward to have the opportunity to make the one or the other remark on what we will hear. Thank you again.
Thank you too. Okay, perfect. So, a team of Moldova, are you ready? Who will be presenting?
Yes, I am here.
Okay,
My name is
Daniela.
Yes.
Okay.
So I will do
Wait just a second.
Okay.
You have 5 minutes and I will
Okay.
start running time, okay? And I am strict, so I will
Okay.
tell you 30 seconds before, okay?
Yes.
Okay, go.
So my name is Daniela. I'm representing with the rest of my colleagues, the team from Chisinau, from our faculty at the International Economic Relations and World Economy. So basically we're a small team of 5 people. They're ambitious people that are looking to create a better future for ourselves and from the rest of our young generation. So we have done a lot of research about our future recommendations and what are the things that we would like to be improved in the future. So first of all, we think that it has to be paid more attention to the small medium enterprises, as they represent more than 99% of the European businesses and 2/3 of the private sector jobs. So also in our country, the small medium enterprises have a very important role in our economy, and we think that more projects have to be related to this area with the small medium enterprises. So also, as we are, another recommendation is like, despite the pandemic situation, our country is pretty affected as we export the most of the times agricultural food abroad. And also because of the climate changes, we are really affected from this point of view. And maybe some more projects have to be related to agricultural things in order to help these kind of countries like us. Also, we think that in the future has to be done more cooperation between countries, even though not all of them are at the same level of development. We think that more cooperation has to be done because each country has different points of view of visualizing the world and everything that's happening. So I think more partnerships and more cooperation has to be done, not only on the European continent, but at the international level. Also, we think that more attention has to be paid to people and not to political games, even though it may be heard a little bit bad, but we think people are very important because they are the main workforce, and actually everything that's happening in the economy and generally is based on the workforce, on the people. So we think also a part of the project has to be related to people and how to develop their personalities and how actually to share their ideas with everybody. So, and another point of view related to our country, to the Republic of Moldova, is like we need more partnerships with other countries, even though maybe we do not follow all the regulations. We think that we deserve a chance and more help also with the pandemic situation, because actually we are in a very bad situation. And we hope in the future to have part of more partnerships with the European Union. So basically, these are our recommendations, and about details we will discuss in the future.
Mm-hmm. Beautiful. Thank you, Daniela. You made it really on time, even before that. More space for Mr. Mandl. Mr. Mandl, would you like to react to that?
Yeah, thank you for that. Thank you, Daniela Petko, if I'm right. I like this presentation since main pillars of let's say, the ingredients for a positive future are represented in it. And that's something all of us should always remember. Daniela mentioned more cooperation. Daniela mentioned the role of the people, which is more important than the role of political games, political tactics, and whatever else is conducted. And she also mentioned that economy is based on the workforce. In my case, that's one of the reasons why I wanted to work in the Employment Committee, in the Labor Market Committee in the European Parliament as well, since especially in a continent with well-educated people, and Europe is one of it, it's even more important than anywhere else that people have the opportunity to work properly and to earn proper money for it, and to be innovative and to realize their projects they want to realize, their visions, and sharing ideas with everybody. Daniela also said. If I had the opportunity to add something really related to what Daniela has already said, it's like in the same framework, I would say that sometimes these ideals Daniela has presented us with are harmed by old conflicts, by over conflicts which are overcome, like ethnical conflicts, nationalistic conflicts, para-religious conflicts, I would say, not only in Europe, but in many parts of the world. And that's something we should overcome. And that's something we should leave behind in the 21st century. I would say we should never, as I would say, as academics, as educated people, in your case, as young people, we should never estimate, let's say, the negative impact such old conflicts can have on people. And that's something we have to sort out. And that's also a field via cultures, via dialogue, via personal contact. Maybe that's the most important thing, personal contact. We should connect people from different backgrounds, whatever background it might be, national, religious, or ethnical background. This seems important to me. Thank you, Daniela, again.
Thank you very much. And because Daniela spared little time, is there some question from Team of Moldova which you would like to pose to either Mr. Mandl or Mr. Bilcik?
Actually, we have a question from the whole team, and it is very short. Why does the European Union is interested in such a small developing country like our country, the Republic of Moldova?
So I'm really interested in what Mr. Mandl will say, or Vladimir. You? Okay, go ahead.
I'm happy to jump in. I think it's an excellent question, and just a living proof of that we are really interested is I happen to be also a member of the parliamentary delegation to Moldova. We just had a delegation meeting online with the members of the delegation and discussing the situation in Moldova with the EU ambassador in Chisinau, Mr. Michalko, who also happens to be a Slovak diplomat, by the way. So I follow quite closely what's happening in the country. We also had an important discussion exchange on the situation in Moldova in the Foreign Affairs Committee in the Parliament. And why are we doing this? Because we believe that Europe will be better off, safer, more prosperous. People in Europe will be better off the more of a European future we can aspire to in a larger number of countries across Europe. And this is about positive change. It's about bringing change to a place like Moldova. I think Moldova deserves a European future, deserves real reforms, and deserves a perspective for the sake of young people like yourselves. I've been to Moldova several times in different parts, not just in Chisinau. I like the country very much, and it's a country of many, many skilled young people. And I hope that they can have a real future, not just by leaving Moldova, but by actually working towards a European future inside Moldova. And this is something we are trying to do also through our support of Moldova's European perspective. You know, I think it's also very good, and maybe this is my second point, and very important from the European perspective, that the European Union creates space for especially smaller countries. You know, small countries can thrive and feel well and secure inside the European Union. I know this is also a big challenge for our neighborhoods in the Western Balkans, but also in our eastern neighborhood. Moldova is a small country. It has large neighbors. And I think it's important that Moldova feels it has a strong support and ally in the European Union when it comes to facing these neighbors, particularly from the east, namely Russia. So I think there are very good reasons why we support Moldova as a country and why we support Moldova in terms of the people and the people's future in the country, especially you young people. So I think it's very natural we do it, and there are real reasons for all of us in Europe, but also for all of you in Moldova. I just want to say, you know, imagine if we had all these big conflicts all across our neighborhoods. It would be not just a problem and a mess for you, but also it would be a huge problem and a mess for all of us. So let's work towards a European future in all of our neighborhood, including in Moldova.
Okay, thank you for your answer.
Thank you, Vlado, and thank you very much, team of Moldova. Great work. Now, team of Banska Bystrica, and after them, Belgrade University, get ready, okay? So who will present for Banska Bystrica, please?
Hello, my name is Ihor Sobol. I'm a team member from Banska Bystrica. And first of all, I would like to thank you for giving me the floor, for giving me the opportunity to present our recommendation policies. Can I start?
Ihor, yes, you can, right now.
Thank you. Our topic is fight with hoaxes and fake news in the European Union. Fake news represent one of the tools by which foreign powers can achieve some goals by spreading fake news in other countries, not only in Slovakia, but across the world. Wars today are not waged in conventional ways than they used to be, but rather in a hybrid way. The phenomenon of fake news is a part of it. However, hoaxes and fake news influences not only international relations and security issues, but also public health. For example, during the coronavirus pandemic, we saw a lot of hoaxes about medicines, vaccines, and so on and so forth. So our policy recommendations concern three fields: education, internal policy, and international cooperation. Speaking about some changes in education, we would recommend ministries of education in some countries issue a recommendation for secondary schools to set up a conversation with students about misinformation on the web. Explain them the basic principles of checking information on the internet, and this will help at least some to reduce the trustfulness of young people to doubtful news. Another recommendation is to set up an advertising for youth people across the European Union of a website or a mobile application which consists disclosures of fake news. For example, Europol, the website of Europol does this. Speaking about internal policy, governments have a wide range of tools to stop spreading the fake news, but sometimes they are tied up with freedom of speech. In order to avoid the violation of these basic human rights, governments have to be resourceful. For example, government could create a blacklist of advertisers and media outlets, but banning these sources could be the violation of the freedom of speech. So we recommend to make this blacklist of a recommendatory nature. So people could just see which sources spread fake news without banning them. Moreover, there should be a criteria which could describe these sources. The second recommendation is that governments should involve digital platforms more actively. Social networks like Facebook or Twitter or Google search could incorporate in their news feeds and search queries the possibility of launching a real-time checking system. So these social networks and Google could check the sources of the news automatically and blocking the fake news. The third field of our recommendation is international cooperation. We have two recommendations in this field. First of all, countries could establish social media accounts and web pages where they could name biggest websites that are spreading hoaxes and fake news. States could start with their neighbors and regional blogs such as Benelux or Visegrad Group. Another recommendation is that they should expose the concrete fake news, explain why it is deceiving, and post link the relevant source that states the fact. Then they should do whatever they can to spread this information on any other social media platform like Facebook or Twitter. Thank you for your attention. That's it.
Beautiful, Jor. Thank you. Great. You also were in the limit. I see that teams are very nicely prepared this year. Amazing.
Thank you.
Who will be responding, Vlado or Mr. Mandl?
Now Vlado should be first, I guess.
I'm happy to respond though. I think Lukas, this was originally supposed to be your field, but I'm happy to chip in with a couple of things because of course fight against disinformation is a crucial topic. And we feel it especially now in the context of the COVID-19 situation. One of the things we have felt all across Europe, but especially now in the neighborhood, is that disinformation can really undermine our democratic societies, but literally it can also harm the health and the lives of the people. When you just look at the number of hoaxes which have been widely supported about the coronavirus in our society, and when you hear about the cases of people who've actually even followed some of these pieces of advice and harmed their own health or even died. There was a case of a specific person in the United States who I understand basically ate or drank something which you use for cleaning your fish aquarium, and that person actually died because he thought this was going to cure him from COVID-19. Such cases are terrible, dreadful, and we should do everything we can to make sure that we defend facts in our public life. Fight against disinformation doesn't mean we don't allow people express their views. I think people should be free to express their own views. This is very important. But especially, and this is where I really would like to underline the message that you're sending, we need to be responsible with respect to facts. And when it comes to also the social media websites, we have to prioritize facts over fake news, over lies, over fake propaganda. And this is where we face an uphill struggle because we, of course, have a lot of fake news coming from outside of our borders, and we have to face propaganda which is fueled by the external forces, especially from Russia, but increasingly in recent months also from China, I must say. And we also have to really talk directly to the social media, because I'm still of the generation when I like to buy, I must say, I like my printed newspaper in my hands. And I grew up watching television and the news during a regular hour. But I know today's, especially young generation, you know, the most of the media that you get and the sources that you get and rely on are the social media. And here I think we need to be a lot more vigilant, and we also have to be very responsible when it comes to the platforms. One of the things we are trying to do in the European Union, and we anticipate this coming fall, is that the European Commission is going to propose a kind of regulation which will make sure that all the social media will really be responsible. And when it comes to protecting us from unlimited exposure to fake news, propaganda, and all social platforms will participate in this, and they'll also report very clearly on the data which through which they'll show how they fight the spread of fake news. So this is one area where we can actually, from the European Union, take effective action. Quite frankly, Slovakia, Austria alone couldn't fight the fake news. We can only fight fake news effectively while preserving the freedom of speech from the level of the European Union and European action. This is where we see real added value of the European Union. And this is where I feel the EU is important. But I'll leave also some space for Lukas to comment on this, because I think this is a really important topic. And quite frankly, it's a topic which I think we Central Europeans feel very strongly about. And we sometimes have to try to convince some other Europeans, especially in the West and from bigger member states, where they don't feel that this is such an acute topic. So it's also a bit of a fight among us in Europe, but I think the fight is going in the right direction. We have to take action at the EU level against this nasty stuff, because it's really undermining democracy, and it's undermining critical thinking, and it's really making a mockery of politics sometimes when fake news really dominate our discourse. So thanks for bringing up the topic, because that topic is extremely important.
Thank you.
Thank you, Vlado. Mr. Mandl, please.
Thank you, Vlado. My staff immediately after you started to speak pointed out that it was in advance defined as my task to react on that. Sorry for that. Of course, I agree with everything you've said. I will not repeat it for the others, but I want to inform you that the European Parliament has established a special committee on disinformation from foreign sources, which is not less than hybrid warfare. Hybrid warfare is what we call the security risk of our time. Hybrid warfare means sometimes warfare is conducted which you can't see in the cyberspace via different forms of IT crimes, information technology crimes, and so on, via hacking, and also via disinformation, which had an impact on the last presidential election in the United States, as we all know, and which is scientifically confirmed, which had an impact on the referendum on Brexit in the United Kingdom, and which can really harm our European societies via splitting up, especially East and Western Europe. And that's something I think about each and every day, that the East and the West should cooperate closer together. I criticize nearly every day what I call the arrogance of the West in some respect in the EU, but also to see oneself as a victim in the East sometimes can be an issue. I try to be frank with you. It's just very outspoken what I say. And again, countries like Slovakia or Austria are I would say, are in a special position to connect East and West. And as you can see, with regard to the discussions on finance in Europe, the multi-annual financial framework, also the recovery fund with regard to the pandemic, it's also a conflict between South and North that can harm Europe. And sources and powers from the outside can trigger these conflicts. and can harm us that way. And this is part of hybrid warfare, and that's the reason why I'm happy to be part of this special committee on disinformation, which will very soon start its work and try to put things in proper place to defend Europe actually against this disinformation from outside. Of course, inside Europe, disinformation like this sometimes finds partners which don't even know that they support a larger action by foreign sources, but spread fake news. And what I call the most important, I would say, medicine treatment against disinformation and fake news, it's education. It's clear to me. It's education by far, because a person who is more or less educated in a general sense will not believe fake news as much as one who doesn't have, let's say, that much sense for plausibility. Let's call it that way. And the third point from my side, I had discussions in my home country in Austria with people who think the fight against disinformation and fake news would be also a fight against the freedom of speech, and that's wrong. I want to underline that. What we defend via the fight against disinformation is the freedom of speech and the freedom of opinion and the press freedom, because only in a society where an opinion remains an opinion and the fact remains a fact, and things are not mixed up, and things are and people are educated in order to sort out what's disinformation, what's information, what's an opinion, what's a fact, what's truth, and what's just something somebody claims. Only in a society like this, freedom of speech, freedom of opinion, press freedom are possible, and that's what we defend against disinformation. So we must never mix things up and believe the conspiracy theory that the fight against disinformation would harm the freedom of speech. It's actually the other way around. It's the difference.
Mm. Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Mandl. And is there some very brief, very short question of team or from team of Banska Bystrica to our MEP guests?
I don't know. I don't have any questions. I think they responded very clearly, but maybe my colleague has.
Or maybe they would like to ask something to you.
Or
not necessary, just in case. There's always the right of Mr. Bilcik and Mr. Mandl to pose questions to you, and you need to be ready, okay? Okay.
Yep.
Well, then we can move on to Belgrade, and after Belgrade, Bratislava, get ready. So who will represent Belgrade's team today?
Good afternoon from Team Belgrade.
Bojana, great. Okay.
I just wanted to let you know I will start and then my colleagues will continue. So we will all speak, but everything will be in time limit of 5 minutes.
Beautiful.
Okay.
As you wish, absolutely. All right, you may start.
Thank you. Okay, our topic is mini hydropower plants, and the main point we will here present is the usage of renewable sources. So we wanted to say that Serbia handed over negotiation position for chapter 27, and we think that is very important, but we have here mini hydropower plants, and we could see that there are many negative effects of mini hydropower plants, and mainly they were invented so that we can make sustainable and clear energy, but we can see that that is not the main picture. The main problem is that the construction of mini hydropower plants is leading to destruction of nature, local communities, citizens, and also we have a problem with law and regulations, because the construction of mini hydropower plants is leading to we are not respecting the law of our country. Also, this problem is that with mini hydropower plants, we have tiny fraction of energy, and the benefits are not for all. So we have even up to 50% higher price for energy when we have mini hydropower plants, but it's not benefit for all citizens. It's just benefit for small amounts of individuals. So that's a second huge problem. And also we can see that this is way to earn money, but it's not beneficial for our citizens, and it's not beneficial for living world we are having in the river. So these are the main points, and now my colleague Markus Žunić will continue. Thank you.
Thank you.
So hello, the problem that my colleague presented is actually that local community have been fighting against the mini hydropower plants for over 2 years. And the problem actually includes all neighboring countries, not just Serbia. And so the corruption activities are the main reason why actually the procedures for getting the building permits and so on are neglected. And actually we recommend, and that is our first recommendation, that EU should actually provide more solid monitoring for the Serbia and the rest of the Western Balkans country, in a sense that we need to implement the recommendations from chapter 27 of accession process. Also, we recommend the steps as detailed control of actually getting the building permits process, and tests for conservation of the endemic species of animals and biodiversity and so on. So we believe that actually the local community should be included in the building of the power plants, and it should be educated about their impact on the environment, and that it won't actually, in fact, it won't actually affect their lives. And we see importance of EU action actually in the additional assurance that population will have when the plans are implemented. So thank you. The other recommendations will present my colleague Ilya.
Okay, I will represent you second and third recommendation of our team.
1 minute.
Okay, so second recommendation, we think that EU could use its role in the Western Balkans and motivate Serbia to make a unique model that will work with its differences and potentially include the usage of other renewable sources, such as solar energy, bioenergy, biomass, water and wind. This solution could be more cheaper and with more benefits, and ideal solution for both EU and its members, and that not only Serbia, but also entire Western Balkans region. First of all, because we will have more energy efficiency. Second, it will be cheaper. And third, there will be no harm for our nature. And this is also growing potential for creating not only EU, but also Western Balkans area as a climate neutral space. And third recommendation is to using renewable sources of energy through regional cooperation. This means that EU could motivate and encourage Western Balkans countries to create joint projects such as construction of wind farms, solar, hydro and geothermal power plants. If we use these sources together, we can ensure greater energy efficiency, and also this ultimate outcome of regional cooperation will be greater energy security and energy independence, not only for individual states, but for entire Western Balkans region. And also it would lead to a significant reduction in the pollution rate, which is also one of the most important problems in our country, in the region, of course. That's good.
Done. Perfect. Beautiful.
Thank you.
Thank you very much to all three of you. And now Mr. Bilcik, Mr. Mandl, who will be taking this challenge.
I'm happy to take it, and I'm very. I mean, first of all, congratulations. This was excellent. I enjoyed the way you divided the topic. This was very good teamwork. Very impressed, both in terms of the presentation of the problem, the analysis, and the recommendations. I also find this topic especially very pertinent. You know, I'll tell you very honestly, when my country was trying to join the European Union 20 years ago, we didn't talk about the environment very much, and of course it's catching up with us. Now, today we are in a situation, if we don't take the environment, its protection, but also our ability to basically adjust our lives to the challenge of the climate change, but also the challenge of the loss of biodiversity, we will have hard time making the world and Europe a sustainable place for the next generations. We now have the Commission, whose central agenda is the Green Deal. This is the agenda with which also Ursula von der Leyen from our EPP group won her mandate as the President of the Commission, and it's one of the focal points of this current Commission. And so whatever happens when it comes to investments in Europe, but also in the candidate countries and in Serbia and in the region of Western Balkans should take into account the environmental consequences. I think this is crucial, and I really do like the way you're thinking about this. Now, in terms of the mini hydropower plants, you know, I'm not an ecologist or an expert here, but actually I have a number of colleagues working on these issues. And maybe one thing I'd like to underline is investment in environmentally sound projects shouldn't really be subject to select and even corrupt practices. You should always have a fair assessment in all respects. And I know that a lot of times these mini hydro plants are built without really taking into account the consequences for the biodiversity, for the life of the fish in the area, which often are the source of income for a lot of people in the area. And of course, the effects may not be economically sound. So indeed, it may be a subsidy which is both damaging the environment and also damaging the local economy. And this all has to be taken into account when assessing and allowing for such projects. So I really like your analysis. Now, at the same time, we do need to think about the way we get our energy. We all need energy. But we need energy which is renewable, which is sustainable, and which is really damaging the environment in a way which is least harming. This is something we need to look for. I also like the way you underline the problem of pollution. I know how big this is, especially in Belgrade, in Sarajevo, for instance, across the Western Balkans, especially in winter months, has to do often with the fact that people burn whatever they can find to basically create heat, and I know how harmful it is to the people in the region, and how many deaths there are annually just from really destroyed lungs, because the air quality is terrible. Let's be honest about this. So I think this is something which has to be dealt with as well, and is an important part of the accession agenda and the European perspective for the region, but also specifically for Serbia. So I just want to congratulate you on the selection of the topic. I think it's important. And I don't know if Lukas has anything to add. It's interesting what we're watching today in Austria. We have a conservative and a green government in Austria, something which 20, 30 years ago we couldn't have thought of, but today we see that we all have to join forces to really fight for economic change, which is sustainable and environmentally sound. And this is something which I'd like to underline also in the European sense, that things are changing in this respect.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Vladimir. Mr. Mandl, would you like to add something to this?
Again, it's not surprising. I agree with Vlado. I only add maybe two things. The one is energy plays a crucial role when it comes to environment. And Vlado has made many important points on that. But energy also plays a crucial role when it comes to global policy. And I would say when it comes to the competition of systems and the competition of what we call the political West. And for example, Russia, especially Russia, when it comes to energy. And that's something we have always to sort out as Europe. And we discuss it in the Security and Defense Committee and in the whole defense policy area under the expression of strategic autonomy. Europe, that's also one of the lessons from the pandemic. Europe has to become strategically more autonomous than ever before, or than in the last decades at least, because as we always have said in advance to the pandemic, one of the aspects, one of the nature of a crisis is that you don't know in advance who will be your partner in the crisis and who will maybe be your opponent, or who will maybe not be able to be your partner then. And then the pandemic came, and as the name says, it's a worldwide thing, it's globally, and that's why each and everybody is affected, and that's why it's not that easy to have partners anywhere in the world. And that's why for some days or even weeks, Europe had trouble to have enough medical equipment, enough masks, and so on. And this is only a small example for a very, very big picture that tells us we need more strategic autonomy. And this is especially true for energy. What I discuss a lot is the so-called, but I don't want to go too deep into that, but to make you at least aware of it. What I discuss a lot is the so-called Nord Stream pipeline project, which actually delivers resources, gas from Russia to several European countries. We, at least we Austrians, but the large part of EU totally agrees with being part of the so-called political West. Many EU countries are also NATO members. Austria defines itself sometimes as a country in the political West, even when it's neutral. But actually, this pipeline is 90% ready. It's built, it's there. Human resources, financial resources, and so on are in this project. So it's in some respect also a question of also environmental morality to use it since it's built, but to work properly on a future with more autonomy. So energy plays this role. And maybe one last sentence to the climate change. We do a lot. I totally agree with Vlado on we have a much better understanding for that in this generation today. But as 6% of world's population as EU, we will not lonely or alone meet the challenges of climate change. We need the others. And this is one more reason why it's so important that Europe becomes more strong to the outside, becomes more influential in other parts of the world, not in a specific interest, but in the interest of what we call European values, universal values actually, like human dignity, like individual freedom, like also the way we deal with climate change. And if large parts of Asia, also large parts of Americas, and others don't more or less agree with our approach of today to climate change, mankind will not be able, no matter what Europe would do, mankind would not be able to confront this. Thank you also from my side to the presentators.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Mandl, Mr. Bilcik. And because time moved on, I suggest to leave the questions from the teams or from you MEPs to the teams to the end, and let's continue with Bratislava right now. Who will be presenting from our Bratislava team, please?
It will be me, Tomáš Ďuriš, but I'm really sorry, but I cannot really start the camera. I don't know why, but my PC is not working correctly.
Okay, we'll forgive you. Just a second, after you, Novi Sad, get ready, okay? Okay, Tomáš, so you will have 5 minutes. Will you present alone or also somebody else will join you?
I will present alone our positions.
Okay, great. So I will tell you before you have 1 minute left, okay?
Okay, thank you. So thank you for the floor. My name is Tomáš Ďuriš and I am from University of Comenius in Bratislava, Slovakia. We actually chose a lot of issues, a lot of topics that from where which we actually chose just some of the most important for us. We were focusing mostly on the international relations because we think this is one of the really big challenge in these years. So the theses which we chose were accession process of the Western Balkan countries to the European Union, Chinese influence and soft power, and also the education. So To start with our recommendation, first recommendation is actually on the thesis of accession process of the countries of the Western Balkan. National position is quite unclear in Slovakia, but it is slightly against the accession process at this time. We would actually agree, and we would advise the European Union to not start the process until economic crisis will be done. We all can see the importance of accession processes for these countries and for the democratic politicians who are advocating pro-European topics and politics within these countries. However, the economic crisis would hit several European countries really hard, and Slovakia too. Since we started to focus on automotive industries for decades, we ended up as some sort of, well, car production country for the European Union. But through the economic crisis, people would buy less cars, and it would mean a massive downfall of our economy. And since because of COVID-19, more Slovakian people came home from abroad and they are not planning to go back, we would need any job reserved for our own population. However, if we accept the countries as Montenegro, as some other countries from the Western Balkan through the economic crisis, we could actually wait rise in migration from these countries, not only to the countries of the V4, but also to the other Western countries, which will actually decrease our economy even much more. So the first advice is wait until the economic crisis and the crisis of the COVID-19 is finished to the next accession processes. Second point or second recommendation is addressing Chinese influence and soft power with the foreign direct investments in Slovakia. We would agree also with the national opposition, because after the last economic crisis, China were able to recover faster than any other countries in the world. They did it mostly by focusing almost all their money to the infrastructural projects in China, which gave people work and also invest into their own country and tourism. After the crisis, we saw that there were some countries who refused to help the help from the International Monetary Fund, as for example Hungary, and they accepted massive financial help from China. China went to Hungary and made some greenfield projects, acquired some big businesses from Hungary, and they even built their European bases for Lenovo and Huawei in Hungary because of the conditions they received by the Hungarian government. And by this step, China now were able to dump the prices of many items in the European market because of Schengen, and also were able to make their own items with mark made in Europe. And this is a problem we will face after the crisis, because V4 countries are considered as some sort of entry gate for the Chinese foreign direct investments into the European Union. And since a lot of EU countries, as ours, will be weakened by the crisis, we would not be able to refuse Chinese money unless we will be strong as before the crisis. So in our opinion, great step would be—
1 minute, sorry,
Yes,
1 minute left.
Okay, so I will speed it up. So in our opinion, great step would be allocate even more money from structural and cohesion funds to stop people from losing their jobs. If the EU can do this and focus solely on their weakest countries or the weakest regions, we would be probably able to not only stop Chinese influence, but also to increase public image of the European Union in Slovakia. It would, however, need a massive campaign, because China and Russia make a lot of money, put a lot of money into the campaigns. They're using Confucius Institute and so on. And the last point, or the last recommendation, is to how to handle the conspiracy media and rise of extremist tendencies in our country. In our opinion, conspiracies and other things can be answered not only by increasing the number of regulations of social media and of other spheres, but the key to everything is, in our opinion, the education. As we can see on Finnish case—
Tomáš, your time limit is done. You may say last sentence, please.
Okay. So this is why we think that the best and the only solution to this conspiracy situation is to make education as a mixed competency between the European Union and the national state, where the national state would add the cultural language pieces. However, all the other things would be done by the European Union to increase the quality of our education, which will definitely lead to the less well, to the that people would less believe in the conspiracy media. I'm sorry.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Okay, you opened some really big things, and I'm really interested how our MEPs will handle them shortly. Please. Mr. Bilcik or Mr. Mandl?
I'll start very briefly,
Vladimir.
and maybe we can also divide that. It'll be a real snapshot. First, it's very good to know that the world is still a small place, and I'm very happy to listen to, although I can't see him, my former student Tomáš Juriš. So it's very nice. Now, three important points which he raised, or the Bratislava team raised in the presentation. I'll start from the last one, and that's how to fight the fake news and effective education. I think education is and should be an important part of this. We need as much critical thinking as we can, which means we need to modernize the education in Slovakia, but also across Europe. We need to invest heavily in modern education. I think this could be one of the priorities, by the way, of the whole EU recovery efforts, which we anticipate through the EU Recovery Fund after the Corona crisis. If there is one sector where I would invest heavily, it is education. It is science and research. We really need to invest in people's brains, so to speak, in people's knowledge, because that'll be the basis of our success in future, also global economic competition. So I'm all for it. And specifically, I also joined the Erasmus 500 campaign, by the way, recently, which is calling for the educational exchanges across Europe, whereby we also from the EU budget do need to put in more money in this. And we need to make sure that even students who are socially disadvantaged have a chance to go on Erasmus, and we provide the minimum from the EU level. So I'm all for support of the education, also from the EU level. In that sense, I see a lot of space also for greater EU competence in this field. Second point on China, and this is, I'll just underline the EPP group's position on this, because I think that's important. We have publicly called for really stopping the aggressive ways in which China has been trying to take over a number of companies and investments in Europe, strategic ones. And especially we should really make a block on this for the foreseeable future, at least the coming year. This is from what our chairman Manfred Weber has made very clearly publicly. We need to rethink the way we deal with China, and we need to be very careful about China's aggressive way when it comes to strategic takeovers and investment. Last point on enlargement, that was the most interesting contribution. A bit skeptical, I must say. Now, I want to underline, enlargement has never been easy. Never, never, ever. And we know it very well even with our friends from Austria. We had transition arrangements for the free movement of labor. And these are all the things we can look at when it comes to accession also from the Western Balkans. And I know, you know, it's not always an easy story, but it's always a win-win story. This is not a zero-sum game, as we say in social science, but also in politics. I think we need to work on accession now. We have a unique window of opportunity to work on enlargement, towards enlargement. I agree we'll have other priorities with the post-COVID-19 crisis, but the goal which the Commission has set out, I support very clearly, is to have at least one country from the Western Balkans ready for accession by 2024 is realistic. And there is a lot of work to be done on the ground as well. You know, Serbia and Montenegro are not really moving when it comes to accession negotiations, but it's good that we now have Albania and North Macedonia joining the game. I hope we can also bring Kosovo on board at some point soon, and ultimately Bosnia and Herzegovina. We need to start negotiating because that's the only way we can also force reform. So I see in the accession process a great chance, I agree when it comes to allaying the fears of the public, you know, jobs being taken up by foreigners. This is a big theme, but we should also take it as an opportunity. You know, Slovakia, for instance, has never been a country to which foreigners used to come to work. Now that's changing. we are accepting labor force from other places, Ukraine, Serbia. I think that's good news for our country. That means actually we are becoming an attractive place. And I think we need to do this in a way which makes sure that those who come to our country to work have decent conditions to work. At the same time, they take up the jobs which are available, and not at the expense of the domestic labor market. I mean, but this is something which we can take care of just the way we did it in the past enlargements. But we need to make sure that the Western Balkans have a European future, because there is also a much bigger game at stake here. And China and Russia are watching, and we have enlargement as our only tool. Thanks.
Thank you. Really to the point. Mr. Mandl.
For the sake of the time schedule, I only say I agree with Vlado today. I'm happy that education was again mentioned by Tomasz with regard to conspiracy theories and fake news. And as far as I understand, we have 3 or 4 other presentations, so maybe we can switch to the next.
Okay. Great. So now a team of Novi Sad University, who is representing you? Marco? We cannot hear you.
Now, do you hear me now?
Yes, yes. Beautiful.
I wish to say hello to everyone and to thank you for the opportunity to speak in front of such a big crowd, so to say. Because we are studying journalism, I would say that we had to be a bit selfish, so we decided to talk about the media situation in Serbia, if that's okay.
Absolutely, and your time goes now, please.
Because Serbia is a country in a process of transition, we didn't really develop all the institutions. So therefore, our media sector is at pretty bad condition. The main trouble is that we don't have a very good developed market. So the most of media depend on the money they get from the government. They cannot make enough money from the advertising because the economical situation isn't that good, and you cannot stress enough how the media are a big pillar of democracy. They are such an important part of of that process. So we need to speak about that because media cannot earn enough money to survive. They depend on government fundings. That's the good way from government to control every media in the country, so they can report as the government want, and therefore we don't have enough of independent media, enough of the media that work in interest of public. We can say that our laws are according to the European ones. That is true on paper only, because when you go to the praxis, it's pretty much different. The government bodies, which are supposed to be independent, which are supposed to regulate the media sphere in our country, don't do their job properly. And we think that the European Union is the one that should be involved more, and that should control that area here, because as you know, we have traveled a long way since the 90s. We had a dictatorship in the 90s, we had the turbulence 2000s, and we are like 30 years from the fall of the communism, and we still haven't developed democracy in media. That was our topic.
Okay. Wow, great. You were nice with the time. Welcome. Mr. Mandl or Vlado, who will be taking this?
I will react very briefly, because I was, this is one of the key topics with which I've been dealing as the rapporteur for Serbia, and also as the mediator in the inter-party dialogue, which has been organized by the European Parliament, and was and has been an important tool whereby I, myself, and my colleague Tanya Fayon have been coming to Belgrade regularly, trying to really help improve the conditions for political competition in the country, also the conditions for a better media situation, in the run-up to elections, which were held in Serbia just a few days ago. We tried very hard last year to do so through dialogue in Narodna Skupština. The goal, of course, was to improve the conditions and also to try to make sure that the boycotting opposition opposing political forces would ultimately run for elections. Now, I will say very frankly, I think we achieved a number of things. We achieved a number of legal changes, also institutional changes. And I agree there are real question marks about how they work in practice. This is something which is also clear from the ODIHR OSCE report, which has come out after elections. And we have a lot of work to do. We also had partial success when it comes to making sure that the opposition will actually run in the elections. Some ran, like the movement of free citizens, but a lot of the bulk of the opposition organized around the Alliance for Serbia didn't run. And I'm sorry to say that, because in the end, that means that the parliament now is in the hands of really a strong, concentrated force. And that's always a challenge for democracy, and also a challenge for the media situation. You know, one of the things I notice in Serbia is when I talk to the politicians, but also the whole scene, everybody has a sense, this is the opposition media, this is the government media. And you have it across the Western Balkans. And I'll say very openly, unless this starts to change, unless there is a sense of a greater public ownership. And by the way, you know, I grew up in communism watching ORF, Österreichischer Rundfunk, because that's a really a good public broadcaster and provider. And I must say, Slovak public television has a number of problems, but we have a sense of a public television. Unless this changes, you're always going to have an issue in the media. So you need to invest in public media, public institutions, and independent institutions overseeing the situation on the ground. I take this as a big issue and a big challenge for Serbia, but also for the Western Balkans. I promise you, as an MEP, I'll work on this. There are no revolutionary changes in this area. Change will only come gradually and over time, but it's important that the situation doesn't worsen. We saw a lot of pressure already during the COVID-19 situation. So we have a lot of work in this sphere. This is an important topic, and Marko, you've done a very good job presenting it. And I look forward, maybe we can have a chance to talk together when I'm back in Belgrade or even Novi Sad. Thanks.
Really great. Thank you very much. Mr. Mandl?
Thank you also from my side. I'm happy that the Serbia rapporteurship in European Parliament is in good hands with Vlado. I want to share one view which seems important to me for the Serbian self-understanding, even of Serbian citizens, not only of the political elite. And that's Serbia, and I hope you understand me properly. Serbia is some kind of Germany of the Western Balkans. I mean, it's the large country and it's a strong economy. And with this state, also large responsibility comes along. Serbia has a large responsibility for itself, for its own accession process, integration process in European Union, but Serbia also has a responsibility for the whole region. And Serbia is the most important partner for EU in that respect to, let's say, to realize the clear European identity of the 6 Western Balkan countries via a membership in European Union. And that's something that seems more important to me than always to talk about the trouble. There is trouble. There were ethnic conflicts and others, and there is maybe some reason for critics on the media sector, as Marko, for example, said before. And I agree with it. But I want to use let's say, my window of opportunity to share this positive aspect of the responsibility of an important country named Serbia. Second aspect, we need public broadcasting all over the Western Balkans, true journalistic public broadcasting in public interest, because that's the let's say that's the nature of public broadcasting, that there is some kind of interest of common good behind the program of these broadcasters. And I would prefer, and some people in ORF, the public broadcaster in Austria, Vlado has already mentioned, are working on this. I would prefer a public broadcaster, one and the same in each and every language of the Balkans. Each and every language of the 6 Western Balkan countries, in order to provide people in Albania or Kosovo or Macedonia with the one and the same content as people get provided with in Serbia or Bosnia or Montenegro, in different languages, but with one and the same content. In some respect, I want to compare it with, some of you know Arte, the public broadcasting project, I would say, which became an elite project after all, for reconciliation between Germany and France. Today, I don't know if Vlado agrees, I'm just kidding. Today, Germany and France are sometimes too close in European Union, but in history, it was really a tragedy. Just to make people in Western Balkans aware what's possible. They were bloody enemies, and today they are close friends, Germany and France. And Arte is one example for positive projects to connect people. But I'm thinking on a public broadcaster with more impact on the population as a whole, not an elite project, but anyway, and nevertheless a public broadcasting project. Thank you, Marco, for being a pioneer in beautiful Serbia towards EU integration. Thank you for that.
Thank you also, Mr. Mandl, Marco, Vlado. And now we will move to Montenegro. Who will represent the Montenegrin team, please?
Greetings from Montenegro. The 3 of us will be presenting in the name of Montenegro, and the other 2 members will be asking and answering the questions.
Okay, beautiful. So, ladies, you may start.
So Montenegro is a transitional democracy, has had the goal of achieving EU membership for more than 2 decades now. The aim is to make the country stronger and more competitive in a way that makes Montenegro more appealing to young, educated experts, both domestic and foreign. We would like to build an image of a place where the future in the world wants to go or stay in the area of domestic population in order to avoid human capital flights one-way ones. In those processes, Montenegro sees entry in the EU as the best possible way. However, Montenegro still has a lot of issues in fields such as corruption prevention, nepotism, implementation of the rule of law, also regulation of media freedom, and citizens are aware of them. These issues must be dealt with prior to membership in the EU, as we see the EU as a new home where all members take care of each other, not as a safe house where we want to run away to, because we are facing problems in our own front law. The present struggles may, however, give us great amount of experience in order to be competitive with other countries when we finally join the alliance, as we have shown, for example, quick and effective response to the current COVID-19 crisis. And we are proud to say that Montenegro is on a good way of completing the negotiation process soon. And we have come a long way, and we have a long way to go, because improving life standards in the country is a never-ending process, but we are highly motivated, more with each passing day.
The EU political system has not suffered from the enlargement. We can see that political integration in the Central and Eastern European countries has not undermined the EU's capacity to adopt and implement the law. Also, the candidate members have deepened and strengthened the connection with the EU themselves, and it has helped the Central and European countries become more strong on the global market regarding the economy. But the EU needs to make sure that it is ready for the new member states, especially with all of those big crises that it's facing right now, like populism, Brexit, external influence, and others. And above all, one of the main tasks for the EU is to inform the population about the negotiation, not in the last moment, but the key decisions should be provided to the public. Also, we strongly believe that the integration process is helping our country to modernize and develop our own educational system, but we do think that sometimes the process is so long that the public has an opinion that nothing really is happening in that enlargement process. Also, we do believe that the education policy is foremost priority in the years to come, and we think that the EU needs to develop a universal framework that should work in all candidate member countries.
Okay, now it's me. The adoption of EU legislation and
1 minute, 1 minute, okay?
I'll try to be fast. So Croatia is often cited an example of a country which became an EU member, but it's doing bad and facing with a large wave of immigrations. And we tend to look over extremely important aspects, which is a national jurisdiction of every country, a country including Croatia. So if Montenegro became a member state, it cannot possibly turn into a powerful and wealthy state after a short period of time. So we have to deal with that. The EU needs to keep pushing every state, especially the member states, and to adopt that legislation which corresponds with one of the EU. So furthermore, the implementation of legislation, especially in candidates and potential candidate states, is on a very low level. So let me say something about internet regulation. Regulations of the internet should be prioritized by the EU legislators. Furthermore, the particular field which we want to emphasize in this area is the issue of the fake news and the anti-EU propaganda and social media. What is the most important thing is respond the right to privacy and freedom of expression, and EU should strictly limit the effects of propaganda and fake news.
Okay, perfect. Thank you very much, ladies. Gentlemen.
A lot on the agenda, and I was in Podgorica as the chair of the delegation with the delegation at the end of February, and maybe just to leave you with a few observations here. Thank you very much for the presentation. I think you hit the really the nail on its head with a number of issues you've raised. I just want to underline Montenegro is the first candidate country in the Western Balkans that actually managed to open all the negotiating chapters. Competition policy was open just a few days ago. So fingers crossed you can start closing the chapters because you've been negotiating since 2012, and of course the negotiations drag on. People start asking what's the purpose, and I think there is a unique chance to move ahead. And Montenegro at the moment stands a really good chance of being one of those countries which is potentially ready for enlargement by the end of the mandate of this commission and this parliament. So I will try to do everything to help you, but there are important things on the way. One is you need to reform. And there are reforms which have not been carried out by Montenegro. We are not going to be able to do them for you. You have to do them in your own country. In that sense, I'm crossing the fingers that you have free and fair elections in August, and that you have a majority in the parliament, the government, which is able to carry out some of these reforms. So this is, I think, the crucial question politically in terms of what's ahead for Montenegro. And this also has to do with communication. The European institutions will never be the most important, the strongest communicators of Europe in any of the countries outside the European Union. This is always the primary responsibility of the governments in the country. Now, the EU, I think, has been doing a good job. And I must say, the EU delegation, for instance, the ambassador, Mr. Oraf, has been very active in recent weeks and months, especially in the COVID-19 situation in Podgorica in Montenegro. And I think that's always very important. But I think you need to forge the pro-European consensus inside the country. And this is, I think, where Montenegro is facing a challenge of the integrity, also of good neighbor relations with all the neighbors, but especially with Serbia, of course. And I hope that you can all manage. And we from the European Union will always encourage good neighbor relations and regional cooperation. That's the only way. As Lukas Mandl just said, France and Germany did it. You know, Slovakia and Hungary did it to a large extent. I think Serbia and Montenegro can also do it, and Serbia and other countries in the region as well. So this is important. This is the key. We need to look at the bigger picture, and Europe is the bigger and a better picture. So fingers crossed, and thanks for the presentation.
Great. Mr. Mandl?
Thank you. Thank you for pointing out also the readiness of EU for enlargement, because as before, while agreeing with everything of Vlado, I tried to add something from my side, and this is to be very frank on especially France, also the Netherlands, and maybe the one or the other member state in European Union who is not really aware of the importance of the Western Balkans for the stability of Europe as a whole. It's not an altruistic project of EU to integrate the Western Balkans. It's highly in the interest of the EU, of its citizens, of the European values, of a proper positive futures under the umbrella of Western values, of the strength of Europe to the outside, which we have already mentioned for many different reasons, also the climate change and other reasons. While in European Parliament, I have to defend our chamber here, Vlado. While in European Parliament, we usually, especially when it comes to the Western Balkans, we can say all the time, have proper majorities for positive relations and positive development. There are a small minority but some member states in the Council, the Assembly of the 27 national governments, who really postpone from one year to the next, to the next, to the next important steps. And that's a field where we have to do our parliamentary work to push these governments, this small majority in the Council, which blocks a lot. I guess European identity is something we have to make the citizens in our countries, which are already EU member states, aware of, that people in the Western Balkans feel a European identity. They don't feel, I don't know what. They feel European in vast majorities. Each and every survey and study shows this. So we need economic reforms, we need juridical reforms, in order to make investments happen, to create jobs and everything like that. Montenegro is in a pretty good state compared with other Western Balkan countries, but also needs some steps forward. And that's what we work on, and that's why I thank you very much for focusing on this again. And that's some kind of all presentations had in common from your side, and I also want to thank for that. Also with regard to propaganda and fake news, especially anti-EU conspiracy theories, which are not only in accession countries, but also in existing member states, an issue we have to deal with in order to, let's say to remain reasonable. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And we will move to the final team, which is team from Sarajevo. Who will present your recommendations, please?
Hello, everybody. I hope
Haris.
you can see me. Yeah, hello. My name is, can I start?
Now, yes, please.
All right. My name is Haris Hibic. I'm from International University of Sarajevo, from Bosnia, Sarajevo. I would like to thank you all for being here. It is a great pleasure to present our ideas and discuss them with you. Our policy has started with a national summarization and I would like to go back to the history of Bosnia and Herzegovina. The first thing is the Dayton Peace Agreement. The Dayton Peace Agreement is a document that I believe, and my colleagues as well, has formed the state of Bosnia as it is, and the current shape of it. The problems that have been created, I mean, the problems that have been solved by the Dayton Peace Agreement, there were another set of problems have been created by it, and I think that those problems are currently still not solved. Those problems haunt us, and they still like keep rotating with the politicians, with people. We always go back to them, and that's one of the biggest problems in Bosnia. One of the things is election system and electoral rules. In Bosnia, it's always a great politics involved, and everybody always mentions politics. It always goes back to it. All things are done because of the elections. People try to buy votes from people. People just want to get their place in the seats, and but that's one of the also main problems in our country. The lack of commitment to the rule of law, which is one of the fundamentals of EU and the constitution of our country, is largely avoided, and it is not enforced enough. One of the key points is the low national commitment in the creation of a strong and unified foreign and security policy. Generally, our recommendations of my team is that EU should help us and advocate the implication of new voting system. For example, we have a country like Estonia that has e-voting, electrical voting, and some model like the one that Estonia has used could be also helpful in solving the problems with the corruption and buying votes and the general situation with the elections. And that could be done by the EU as an imposition to our country. The second thing as a recommendation should be that EU and NATO and the forces that Bosnia looks up to and wants to join them should impose implementation of crucial decisions for Bosnian politicians. We know that in Bosnia, it's a fight between three sides, and it's always blocking one side. That is one of the biggest reasons why everything is not going. Like tomorrow we could join the EU, one part says no, and then the two parts remaining cannot go with it. So it's a huge problem. We need to unify. It is not EU's problem that Bosnia and Herzegovina is not a unified country. We as people of Bosnia would love that, and we would love to be unified and be a member of EU and NATO, but just like with the Dayton Peace Agreement, I think we need a third party, a set of people that will once again react and help us reach that unification of our country and reach that peace that we had to agree upon 20 years ago. The final one is combating security issues.
1 minute.
Combating security issues within Bosnia and Herzegovina. I think Bosnia could really strengthen their relationship with, for example, Croatia, that is part of EU, by solving those international security issues, as well as agencies like Interpol, Europol. Bosnia should be offered to them to help them and assist in catching the fugitives that try to escape in Bosnia in some cases, because there are a lot of cases where Bosnia doesn't prosecute them, and there's a lot of stuff as well. But thank you. That are all my main points.
Beautiful. Thank you very much. Mr. Mandl or Vlado, who is taking this one on, please?
If I may.
Sure.
Thank you for, let's say, reflecting very intellectually on the situation in Bosnia. Bosnia is, for me, the reason to really clearly state that the EU approach to the 6 Western Balkan countries must be, no country must be left behind. Because one of the most negative scenarios I can imagine is that in the number of X years, let's say Albania and North Macedonia will become EU member states, and in X plus Y years, also Montenegro and Serbia will become EU member states, and then things will stuck, and Bosnia and Kosovo will be left behind. And that's something I couldn't agree with as a European citizen, as a human being, as an Austrian, and so on. And of course, even as a parliamentarian, I feel it very close to my heart, I would say, that parliament doesn't work in Bosnia, even parliament, which is so important for a structured, civilized society with debates on a quality level and so on. This doesn't happen in Bosnia. And this is, again, I repeat myself purposely, this is again with regard to ethnical conflicts of the past. And we can discuss, let's say, the value of the Dayton Agreement and everything, but things have happened. And now they are in place as they are in place. And generation after generation has to live among these circumstances, which could be much better if we all stick to a better process. And that's what I want to point out. You mentioned also NATO. Okay, but the EU accession process seems more important to me, as well for EU as for the country, as for its people. And I just want to encourage you, Harris, if this is your correct name, to remain close to that issue, to remain on the one side patient, but on the other side to become, let's say, a scientific, academic pacemaker for a proper civilized development in Kosovo. Sorry, in Bosnia, I wanted to say in that case.
Thank you.
Vlada, would you like to add something?
Maybe just a couple of practical points, because I completely agree with Lukas. We cannot ultimately have two categories of countries in the region of Western Balkans. We have to make sure that all countries have the European perspective. And I think the European Union is taking the issue very seriously, also the problems in Bosnia, and we'll strive to make them even more serious, and we'll have to keep our focus on Bosnia and Herzegovina as well. Let me just underline a few things that we are doing already and we might be doing. One is that the EU appointed a special representative for the Pristina-Belgrade dialogue, which is important. But he also covers other regional Western Balkans issues. This is former Slovak Prime Minister Miroslav Lajčák, and other regional issues in the Western Balkans that actually is really a hidden name for Bosnia and Herzegovina, because he needs to deal with Bosnia and Herzegovina and address the problems there. Bosnia and Herzegovina is not in the process of accession negotiations, and it needs special attention. So we need to focus our political attention on the situation in Bosnia in coming months and years, and I hope we can do more of it. Secondly, I am also a member of something we have in the European Parliament called DEG. That's a Democracy and Election Observations Group, and we meet regularly, and we cover also the situation in the Western Balkans. And we plan before the COVID-19 situation a big regional conference with also parliamentarians, because again, echoing what Lukas Mandl has said, parliamentary democracy has to be the basis of how the Western Balkans operate, and it is very weak in the case of Bosnia and Herzegovina. And I hope we can be back in the region in Sarajevo with this conference on parliamentary democracy as soon as it is possible. By the way, just for your record, tomorrow is an important day for all parliaments. It's the International Day of parliamentarism in the world, the Global Day of Parliamentarism, the 30th of June. And we should remember this when we think about the things that work and don't work in the Western Balkans. And lastly, and I'm quite sensitive to this as somebody who grew older or younger in the 1990s and watched very closely the tragic events in the former Yugoslavia. As somebody who you know, the first time I came to former Yugoslavia was when I was 4 back in 1979. And I have a number of friends there, even some family members. And I've always watched very closely the events there and the tragic events of the 1990s. And of course, Bosnia was the most hit part of the region. And I think here again, we need to push for reconciliation. Reconciliation. Unless reconciliation takes place in whatever useful form, I don't think any society in Western Balkans and let alone the Bosnia will be able to move forward. So again, here I'd like to just echo that, but that was an excellent presentation. And again, I would like to just encourage all of you to persevere also in the case of Bosnia. We cannot give up on Bosnia. We must work for European perspective, European future in Bosnia and Herzegovina.
Thank you. And thanks to everybody, because really the points raised during these debates were just so crucial to the European Union, to your particular countries, and to the life of each of us. We are coming to the end, but before we will sum up or just close our session for today, taking into consideration the time of you and time of our MEPs, I would love to give just a chance to maybe one really brief short question, if you have, from the teams to our MEPs. If you have ready some to which they maybe need to answer just like yes or no, if there is something like this ready for you. If you, yes? Who is talking?
Hello.
Dino. Okay.
Yeah, my name is Dino. I would just like to ask Mr.
Where are you from, Dino? You would be from?
I am from Sarajevo, Bosnia and
From Sarajevo. Okay.
I'm
yes?
sorry I didn't introduce myself.
Okay.
I would just like to make a question to Mr. Lukas and Vlado, if they had a chance to meet any of our leaders, and who of them like made the best impression on them when they talked about, I don't know, Bosnian integration into the EU and stuff like that. Thank you.
Thank you. Interesting question. Okay. So, Mr. Mandl, maybe you start.
It's not that easy to decide. I would say all the leaders who care for the Western Balkans generally also take care for Bosnia, which is obviously Sebastian Kurz, the Prime Minister of Austria, of my home country. But I would say also Angela Merkel in the past, and now she's pretty much obliged during the German presidency to make some steps forward.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, that's my overview. Maybe Vlado can make a deeper look into the question, which leaders are especially close to Bosnia.
I thought maybe just to jump in, I sort of understood the question was about the Bosnian leaders we've met here. I want to mention one event, and again here the European Parliament is very important. We had a historic speaker summit, which took place in the European Parliament in January this year, just before the outbreak of the COVID-19 situation. And we had speakers from all countries in the region, including Bosnia and Herzegovina, who came to the Parliament. And they actually all sat on the podium in the Foreign Affairs Committee, and we had a panel discussion with the parliamentary speakers. And I think those are the kinds of events, the symbolic but also political events, which are important. So that was my own experience. I of course mostly deal directly with politicians in Serbia, whom I've been seeing regularly online in recent months and weeks, and of course Montenegro as well. But I also met the representative of the Bosnian Parliament when he was here. and Mr. Čović was here, and I think he was at the moment representing the whole parliament, because there is a rotating principle, and that was important. But I don't have any direct experience in terms of the current leadership. I think what's important in the case of Bosnia is that the politicians from the different ethnic groups, different religious groups, find a way to be able to speak to each other. I mean, this is the key. I know it's a huge challenge, and I remember, you know, when the war ended in the 1990s, there was a lot of hope for the future of Bosnia. Over 20 years ago, I came to Zenica to observe the elections in Bosnia and Herzegovina. So I traveled around. I have very fond memories, great people. And I think, let me just put it this way, people in Bosnia deserve the best possible politicians. So fingers crossed. And of course, we in the EU are ready to work with you.
Thank you very much.
Amazing. Okay. Well then, I think time has come for us to close the debate. I really think it was really great one. I really thank a lot to Daniela from Moldova, to Ihor from Banska Bystrica, Bojana, Marko and Ilya from Belgrade, and then Tomáš from Bratislava, Marko from Novi Sad, 3 ladies, names of which I do not know, from Montenegro, and then also Haris from Bosnia. I thank a lot to Mr. Mandl, of course, and to Vladimir. I would love to give floor for just a very quick moment to Anja Petković from CEAS from Belgrade, from Serbia, our partner in the project.
Okay, thank you, Lucia. I would just want to briefly thank Mr. Bilcik and Mr. Mandl for listening to the students, because that was basically the idea of this project. We wanted them to meet each other and also to have the opportunity to speak with you. I think it's very important for them, but I hope it was important for you too. And I would like to use the opportunity to also thank all the university coordinators who participated and who prepared the students for this presentation. And of course, thank you, Lucia. It was great to seeing you. And thank you everyone for participating.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I really hope we will next time meet really in Brussels in person. Vlado, Mr. Lukas, would you like to, Mr. Mandl, would you love to say like really short bye or some message to our students? I mean, you're examples for them.
I want to say hvala, faliment, thank you, merci, grazie, and please go on with your academic work in that important field. It's so important. You're the future of Europe. That's what I'm convinced of, and I'm happy that Vladimir put me in and made it happen, that I could actually listen today and participate. Thank you.
Thank you, and I'm very happy Lukas was able to join us. I mean, I only have one sentence. You were great. Thank you very much, and stay as motivated as you all are. And I think there is a real future, European future, for the EU's neighborhood when I listen to you. So please keep up, don't give up, and really keep up the good works. And thank you very much also to Lucia and Anja for all this work. I think this is a very good project, and I hope you can continue with it. And I do hope we get to meet in Brussels once this pandemic is over. Thanks.
Thank you, Vlado. Absolutely. And also to my colleagues, Rastio Valentovic and mostly Milan Ježovica, who is really the silent force behind all this happening for so many years already, who is here silently listening to us all the time. So thank you, Rastio, and thank you, Milan. And well, then let's have a nice rest of our day, and let's just hear from each other then again, and hopefully meet in Brussels. Thank you once again, and have a nice evening. Bye-bye.